This is a process video where I hand drew two flower half wreaths to frame both the hand lettering and the top of the page. These are just some simple doodle flowers, and I started with the largest elements in the two corners of the page, top right and bottom left, and then just drew out from there some smaller elements. I'm going to paint with the Neocolor II water-soluble crayons, and I have three size brushes here for different size flowers. These crayons are actually a water-soluble pastel, and they do not bleed through the Bible pages at all. No matter how much water you use on them, they will not transfer through to the other page, which is the thing I like best about them. That, and they have fairly intense color. You're going to use them very similarly to watercolor, and you'll see I'll use a lot of the same watercolor flower techniques that I taught in previous videos. Here I'm just adding a second color to give some dimension. These water-soluble crayons can be used in two ways. You can either do what I'm doing here, which is I dip the crayon into the water and then put it directly on the page, or you can take the crayon like I'm doing now, where I dip the brush into the water and then take color off the tip of the crayon and put it down on the page. Just like with watercolor, if you want to intensify the color, you want to lay it down in layers, and so let the first layer dry, and then you can always come back and add more color if needed. And also, like with watercolor, these pastels also dry slightly lighter than the actual color of the crayon. Using a smaller brush now for these smaller flower elements, I really recommend that you keep a notebook or a scratchbook of little doodle flowers, and you can look some up on Pinterest or Google search some images of doodle flowers like we did with our black and white wreath, and you can practice in that notebook and then use it as a reference of different flowers that are easy for you to do to add into a floral wreath. This green lettering on the back side of the page was done with a watercolor brush marker. It's one of the first pages I did early on in my Bible journaling experience, and didn't realize that the watercolor brush markers will bleed through the page if they get wet from the other side. And so that's what you see happening there in that top left yellow flower, is the lettering is bleeding through from the other side. I tried to add some little accent dots there on the flowers to help camouflage the bleed through, which worked nicely on the one larger flower on the bottom, but I'm going to have to address some of that bleed through if I can in that top left yellow flower. For these pink flowers, I'm doing the opposite of the big yellow flowers. I'm leading with the pink, and then I will come in and do just a touch of yellow in there to bring kind of a cohesiveness to the colors on the page. And at the end, I'll try and do some up close so you can see some of the detail. The hand lettering on this page was done with a Uniball Gold Signo gel pen. The gold, silver, and white are some of my favorite pins that Uniball Signo does, and they don't bleed through the page either, and they won't reactivate like these watercolor markers that are bleeding through from the other side. These tiny green leaves, I went in first with a dark green, and then I came back and added a touch of turquoise for my accent color to give them a little bit of dimension. I'm looking to make sure that the water from this page isn't transferring that watercolor marker onto the facing page behind. Thankfully, with these water-soluble crayons, you don't have to use a lot of water, and that helps with that bleed through. With these larger leaves, I was just doing the opposite of the tiny ones, similar to like I did with the flowers, to where I did yellow with a bit of pink and then pink with a bit of yellow. I did the turquoise first with the large leaves, and then I laid down the turquoise over the top. Oh, I said that backwards. I meant the turquoise first, and then the dark green over the top, opposite of the small flowers. Now I'm going to use my Illustrated Faith 0.25 pen with that's a very small nib, just to add some sprigs to my centers of my flowers. And then I'm going to use sort of this sketchy outlining. It's very loose, no very defined markings at all. Just going around the edges of everything to define it. And my lines aren't even all connected. So you'll have open spaces, and hopefully you'll be able to see that when I show some detail at the end. By putting these little marks on the edge, like a double line at the edge of the petals, it actually gives the petal the appearance of curling a bit. And I learned that from a real short tutorial from Periscope from an Instagrammer called Mag and Me. And she was an art teacher, and she does some great little drawing tutorials. She's also the one who had posted the tutorial for the Flower Crown Girls that I put on our group Facebook page. I believe the artist's name is Ashley Hickey. Last few touches of the pen. Now what should we do about that bleed through? I'm using my white Uniball Signo pen, and I'm just going over where the green was. I've tried covering up bleed through with white acrylic paint, and sometimes it works, and sometimes if the paint is too wet, the color will just soak into the paint. So I thought I'd try the Uniball Signo gel pen and see if it would give me a surface that I could then put some color on top of without bringing more green out. Now it looks pretty good at this point, but then when I blend it out with a little bit of water, it sort of bled through again. But it looks a little better than it did, and I was satisfied with it. So here's the up close that I promised you. You can see those ruffled petal edges, and that little bit of green bleed through is still coming through, but it looks a little less like a letter that's reversed on the page. And I wanted you to see up here these little tiny leaves that the lines don't even connect on the ends of the leaves. It's very loosely sketched and gives it a look of whimsy. I hope you've really enjoyed learning more about doing wreaths and that you'll give some more a try. This is another kind that you can add to your repertoire of doing wreaths.